Marilyn, 27, always wears a cap now, so nobody, including her, can see the disfiguring scars of her ordeal.
I don't look at myself in the mirror with my head uncovered.
She used to have a full head of beautiful blonde hair and was living a happy life raising a young son on her own in Burlington, Kentucky. That is, until she met 31-year-old Zachary Gross.
I would talk to him on Facebook sometimes.
The two began casually seeing each other. Within months, it had turned into a serious relationship.
It got more like exclusive, aren't supposed to go see anybody else.
But Marilyn's mother, Linda, didn't approve.
There was something I didn't like about him. I didn't trust him. I didn't think he was any good.
And sure enough, Marilyn says Zach would soon reveal himself to be jealous, possessive, and controlling.
The first time it was getting put outside of his house.
She says he grew increasingly more violent and abusive.
It went from that to being actually pushed down like front porch steps.
Soon, Zach was beating Marilyn regularly, she says.
I got a broken nose and 2 black eyes.
Mom Linda was horrified.
She tried to make excuses, but then kind of admitted that she'd been beat up.
Were you worried for your daughter?
Oh, yeah.
She had good reason to worry.
And then after that, I got choked out.
Did you say to yourself, that's it, I'm done with you?
After I was choked out, I did. I told him, dude, you said you're gonna kill me, like I'm done.
But Zach wasn't about to let Marilyn go without a fight. Texting her repeatedly, just before the scalping, he writes in part, "To my love, BFF, soulmate, lover. I hate that you are scared of me, 'cause you shouldn't have to be scared of the one you love." Then he goes on in a text writing, "I am here to protect you and give you all that you need, and everything you need, and then some. I love you with all my heart."
He'd been telling me for like days over text that he wanted to talk to me.
And when Marilyn refused, she says an obsessed Zach started stalking her, following her everywhere she went, and even getting a job at the same book warehouse where she worked.
What could you do to stop him?
A lot of times you don't feel like you can do anything.
Marilyn says Zach got so crazy over her rejection of him that he turned up on her doorstep at 6 o'clock in the morning.
So I opened the door and just get punched in the face.
And when Marilyn screamed for help, she says he got even crazier.
He jumped on the roof of my car till it caved in. He got his tire iron and smashed out my windshield and my back window.
Marilyn says she was afraid Zach might kill her if she called the police.
It didn't seem like he was gonna stop.
Marilyn finally agreed to meet Zach in a desperate attempt to calm him down.
And you felt like you had to give in?
I literally didn't know what else to do.
But the moment she walked through the door of his home, she says she's greeted with a sucker punch to the face.
Bam, just like that.
Yeah, I asked him what that was for. And he brought up pictures of me and my son taken at a park.
And what did that matter?
It was because another guy had taken the picture and posted it and tagged me on Facebook, and I remember.
So he was mad or he was jealous, or what was he?
Both.
And she says Zach continued to beat her up.
I turned my back to him, so he would be punching me in the back of the head and not in the face. And then I ran for the door, but he picked me up and I was like mid-air, trying to throw myself down to the ground so that I couldn't be dragged into his room.
Marilyn says she feared she might not get out of that room alive.
I grabbed onto the door frame.
Marilyn Stanley was about to be plunged into an unspeakable living nightmare.
I can't imagine the pain that she was in and what a human being would be going through at that point in time.
The young single mom had gone to the home of Zachary Gross to beg him to stop stalking her.
It was an obsession and anger that he had.
And Marilyn says Gross, an abusive boyfriend she dumped, was in no mood to talk.
Next thing I know, I'm on the ground in front of the closet, being straddled across my waist, and my arms are pinned down directly at my side.
Marilyn says that as Gross continued to hit her, she managed to grab a knife she'd brought with her in case she had to defend herself against him. But before she could use it, Marilyn says she suddenly had a second attacker on top of her. Gross's pet pit bull, Capone.
So the dog was on you already and you're holding onto the knife.
Yes.
The dog would then bite off most of her right ear.
It bit off the top part up here.
And Gross continued to hit her. Marilyn was suddenly unconscious.
Now what happens?
The next thing I remember is sitting up. The dog was gone, and Zach was kneeling in front of me, kind of like smirking. He said, "Look at you, you're bald. Now nobody's gonna want you. Go look at yourself in the mirror."
Marilyn was too afraid to look.
I didn't look in the mirror when he told me to. I looked kind of in the direction of it, but past myself.
You know enough that you don't want to see.
Right. I could just see blood, and like my hair was wet. And I didn't really think that my scalp was completely gone because I don't remember it being cut off. I thought maybe some of my hair just got, like, maybe in splotches ripped out or something.
But Marilyn says Gross wasn't finished with her yet.
He kicked me in the stomach, and he told me to lay on my side. And he goes, "I'm gonna break your ribs." And he stomped down on my ribs, and they didn't break. He stomped down on my ribs again, and I heard them crack, but I didn't feel it at that point.
Marilyn, how long did you endure this torture?
2 hours.
Marilyn says Gross's brutal bloodlust was finally satisfied.
He helped me wipe the blood off my face and told me, "It's okay, he's done. He's not gonna hurt me anymore."
Did you want to go to the hospital? What did you want to do?
I asked him to call an ambulance, and he told me no because they would take his dog.
Instead, Marilyn says Gross gave her a t-shirt to cover her wounds and a hoodie to put over her head, and then handed her a plastic shopping bag.
And I said, "I don't want this. What am I gonna do with this?"
Marilyn could have never imagined what was in the bag.
I didn't know it was my scalp.
You thought it was just clumps of hair.
Yeah.
Wow. It doesn't even sound real.
No, it doesn't.
So he didn't take you to the hospital?
No, he drove me to the street past my mom's house.
And it was there where Marilyn's attacker would add the ultimate insult to her injuries.
He even asked me if he could have a kiss when he dropped me off.
What a piece of work, this guy.
Her mother will never forget Marilyn turning up at the house that day.
And I heard this voice say, "Help me." But I wasn't sure where it was coming from or who it was.
And Marilyn's sister Ashley thought it was some kind of ghoulish prank.
But then she saw the blood drip down my forehead and she knew that it was real.
And sorry, I always get upset at this point.
It's okay.
And that's when Ashley hollered to me to call 911 that it was Marilyn. And that she was hurt real bad.
All I felt was the weight of my ear, so I was propping it up in my hand. I didn't feel like I had cracked ribs. I didn't feel like my scalp was gone. I didn't feel like my face was 3 times its size.
She held the bag up when she came into the yard and said, "My hair's in this bag."
It wasn't until the EMTs got Marilyn to the hospital that her mother learned to her horror that nearly half of her daughter's scalp was in that bag.
That's when it's like, oh my God, they you know, because you picture in your head when somebody says that somebody was scalped. I mean, it was like unheard of in this day and age, really.
When you saw her in the hospital, did you think you were going to lose your daughter?
I didn't know.
And Marilyn was barely conscious when she was told she'd been scalped alive.
I honestly don't remember them telling me. But I remember the doctor coming in to tell me that my hair is never going to grow back.
When do you believe it actually hit you, the impact of what he had done to you?
I don't think it still has.
Not yet? What is it that you think you haven't permitted yourself to accept or feel?
All of it.
Marilyn's life had hung in the balance as she underwent emergency surgery to repair a severed artery. And she would undergo several more operations before doctors finally succeeded in patching her mutilated head back together with skin grafts from her leg.
So, are you disfigured on your leg?
Yeah, the whole thing's a scar. My whole upper thigh.
But despite a mountain of evidence against him, Zachary Gross would deny he scalped and disfigured the pretty blonde, blaming the hideous crime on his pit bull.
The news said I held a girl down and scalped her hair off, but it's been proven now that my dog did that.
Gross actually called a nationally syndicated radio show from jail after his arrest to declare his innocence.
And they arrested me before they ever got her statement.
Marilyn's reaction?
It's so stupid, I just can't even think of a response to it.
And Detective Brian Cochran says the evidence immediately spoke for itself.
Right out of the gate, we had suspicions that it wasn't just a dog bite case.
Investigators who searched Gross's home found a trail of blood leading from his bedroom where Marilyn was scalped to the bathroom where he had tried to force her to look in the mirror.
It was on the floor, it was on the walls, it was in the bathtub, it was on the towel rack.
But the most incriminating piece of evidence was a pink knife found in a dresser drawer.
And what condition was that pink knife in?
It was covered in blood.
This sounds awful, but were there any pieces of hair or flesh that you found?
There were indeed. There was on the knife blood and hair.
So our argument was that he was hiding the knife.
It is the same knife that Marilyn had put in her pocket for protection when she went to her abusive ex-boyfriend's home the day she was attacked, but that she dropped while he had her pinned on his bedroom floor, beating her.
It becomes more and more horrific as we come to believe that the knife played a larger role in the assault and that it wasn't just a case of a dog biting someone.
Our theory was that when Zachary Gross got possession of the knife, he used it on her.
Investigators would also learn that Gross had a lengthy rap sheet of violent crimes committed against other women,
including 2 assault in the 4th degrees, 1 domestic violence, the other one spouse abuse.
Assistant prosecutor Leanne Beck says the only hole in the case against Gross was that Marilyn was unconscious during her actual scalping.
That's the part that she does not remember.
The last thing Marilyn recalls is lying on the floor with both Gross and his pit bull Capone on top of her, him punching her, and the dog tearing off part of her right ear.
Other than that, the dog didn't do anything else.
And investigators say Marilyn's other injuries appear to have been inflicted by a dog's teeth.
The scalp injury was more consistent with a knife than with a dog.
That finding would be supported at Gross's trial by Dr. William Kitzmiller.
The multiple injuries to the scalp were so severe that replantation was not a reasonable option.
Dr. Kitzmiller is the plastic surgeon who operated on Marilyn's scalp.
That because of the straight nature of the edges, it seems to me more favoring a sharp object rather than a dog bite.
The doctor's testimony was a crushing blow to Gross's defense team.
That was the defense's theory the entire trial, that it was a dog attack.
And Marilyn herself would take the stand at Gross's trial.
Did he tell the dog to get off of you?
No,
Did he push the dog?
no,
Why didn't you drop the knife at that point? Why did you still have the knife?
because I didn't want him to get it.
Marilyn would also step down from the stand to show the jury her horrific scalping wounds.
I think this was really hard for her, but I think it had a huge impact on the jury to see the permanent disfigurement he caused.
The only one apparently unmoved by Marilyn's testimony was Gross.
He did not seem very remorseful about what he did to Marilyn.
And didn't he act out during the trial?
He made a gesture with his hand that was not appropriate for court. The judge held him in contempt for that action.
Marilyn says Gross also contemptuously winked at her in court.
What do you think his wink meant?
It's not over.
But it was finally over when the jury quickly returned a verdict of guilty of assault in the first degree.
Ultimately, whenever a jury makes a decision like that, they make the right one because that's their job, that's how our system works.
And Assistant Prosecutor Marilyn Beck asked the judge to give Gross the maximum sentence.
20 years is what's appropriate for de-scalping a human alive.
But Gross remained unrepentant at his sentencing hearing, still proclaiming his innocence.
I wanted to go to trial so that everybody could hear that Marilyn never said I cut her hair off. Marilyn never said I told my dog to attack. And I feel horrible for what happened. I feel that the verdict was wrong.
The judge didn't. Sentencing Zachary Gross to the maximum 20 years behind bars, plus another 34 days for contempt of court. After sentencing, Gross called Crime Watch Daily from behind bars, still echoing his defense, claiming his dog did it.
Marilyn has never once ever said that I cut her hair off. That was just a doctor's belief that I cut her hair off.
Did you or did you not scout Marilyn Stanley with a knife?
Well, absolutely not.
Marilyn's mom, Linda, still isn't buying it, claiming she would have handed down a much harsher sentence.
I just wish it would be life because I don't want him to ever get out.
For the sake of Marilyn, who is already living in fear of the day Gross is eventually freed.
Marilyn, what's it going to take for you to not be afraid anymore?
I don't think anything could make somebody not afraid. He's a sociopath. He doesn't feel remorse for anything that he's done to anybody.
Marilyn is reminded of what Zachary Gross did to her every day, but she still stands tall.
Zach Gross has taken a lot of things from you, but what hasn't he gotten?
He hasn't gotten me. And he won't. He hasn't gotten my pride. He hasn't got my life. And I won't let him.
She's an amazingly strong woman, that's for sure. Gross has already filed an appeal. As for Capone, the pit bull, who was ordered to be euthanized by the judge, he remains in an animal shelter awaiting the outcome of that appeal. With me now to go inside the mind of a guy like Gross is forensic psychologist Dr. Lou Schlesinger. Doc, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
People have called Gross everything from a psychopath to a narcissist? You haven't worked on this case, but you've reviewed it. What do you say about it?
From a distance, I don't think the label, whether he's a psychopath or narcissistic, really is the important point. As I look at this, the level of sadism, the level of cruelty is just extraordinary in this case, and you don't see that at that level very often. Keep in mind also that this entire incident was triggered by jealousy, and what he did tells me psychologically he must have felt so humiliated and belittled that he overreacted in this way.
And what about the scalping thing?
Human scalping cases are extremely rare. You just get one case every several years. And he could have easily taken the knife and stabbed her and killed her. He didn't want to do that. He wanted to disfigure her in some way so that she's always humiliated the way he felt when he saw that picture.
Is there any chance that Marilyn Stanley can retrieve her memories and then get past them?
Well, with respect to retrieving her memories, that is best understood as a defense mechanism. The mind is pushing that out because experiencing it would just be too overwhelming. So in the course of her treatment, someone, therapist or psychologist, psychiatrist, should not try to retrieve these memories. The defense mechanism is there for a purpose. What I observed of her, she seems to be a fairly strong person, but she's going to need a lot of help over the years.
Dr. Lou, as always, thank you very much for your insights.